Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Rangers Journal. We are back here for another evening of Rangers-based chat. And tonight we are going to be talking about Ianis Hagi and the current situation, or the ongoing situation with Ianis Hagi that has been sort of rumbling over the transfer window and continuing into the season. We've obviously had some new news with Hagi coming out with a statement last night, and we'll touch on that, along with a bunch of things to do with the whole situation, including Clement's opinion and where he seems to stand, having a look at Hagi the player, what he's done for us when he was fit and firing, where we think he is now and whether he fits in the team, and if so, where he could fit in the team, and then we'll kind of summarise as to what our thoughts are come the end. Thank you to everyone who has tuned in the comments. We welcome all your comments on Hagi as we go through, and we'll try and touch on them as we go through the conversation. I've got three great guys here this evening who are going to be having the chat with us about the scenario. So first up to my right as I'm looking at it is Ricky. Welcome to the show this night.
Yeah, good evening, lads. Glad to be back. I've been away on holiday for a couple of weeks, so that's me back, fully refreshed and looking forward to the next few weeks and a wee bit of a chat about the future of our club.
Absolutely. And just below me, in beautiful royal blue, I've got Stevie.
Good evening, mate. Good evening, everybody. How are we doing?
Hi, Stevie.
Not too bad, Stevie. Thank you. Yourself?
Great, mate. Aye. Going on holiday in a couple of days, so yeah, bring it on.
Always a plus, always a plus. And the man who is on permanent holiday all the time from another hotel room is Dino, who's splendid in white. How are you getting on, mate?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you going on, buddy?
I'm not too bad. But if only you were on holiday all the time, mate.
Yes.
But you know, working hard as always.
Yeah, as always, buddy.
Okay, guys, so as I say, we're going to be talking about Ianis Hagi and the situation that has obviously been rumbling on this season. Ianis obviously joined the club and had a really solid year and a half before obviously having that really bad injury that kept him out for just over a year. He's then been put out on a loan, which was not really all that successful, didn't get to play very often, and he's now back at the club. Many expected that he would be sold as one of the sort of players that does have a bit of value. His name obviously carries cachet, both in his home country and sort of a little bit around Europe as well. So I think most Bears had hopes that he would be a player that would help fund the rebuild in part, but he is still here. So the first thing we're going to have a look at is where the situation is in terms of the manager. So the manager sort of came out at the end of August, was asked about Hagi in a press conference, and I'll read the comment out for those who are listening without visuals. So he said in part, "We spoke about that months ago, really openly with him and his agent also. We don't see him to become the next number 10 for Rangers for the next couple of years, so he's to look out for other opportunities, and that story stays the same. For sure, with Bajrami in the building, you have this situation. We will see those things in the future, whether any reintegration is possible. I will not say these things now." So it seems pretty clear there that he doesn't see Hagi as the number 10 for Rangers under his sort of regime. I think most would agree that's probably Hagi's best position and his natural position in the centre of the pitch. And he didn't really want to seemingly get dragged into a conversation about whether or not he could be reintegrated into the team. It seemed pretty much we've spoken to him, we've told him to look elsewhere. Ricky, it seems pretty open and shut to me. It seems pretty open and shut to most people out here talking about it. What's your thoughts on the Clement stance?
Well, I think personally he's maybe going to dig himself into a corner here if he's not careful, because the only transfer window left is the Turkish one, which closes 11 o'clock midnight, whatever it is, on Friday. So come Saturday, if he's still a Rangers player, I would fully expect him to be integrated into that squad. We cannot afford to have £1 million a year player who's contracted to us for another 2 years to be sitting languishing in Rangers B team. It's ludicrous if that's the case. It doesn't seem to me as if he's a bad egg. He seems a clean living young lad, and I will say young because he's only 25, albeit I think he's 26 in October. But he's an asset and we need to make him an asset. And as I say, if he doesn't go between now and Friday night, Rangers need to get him in that squad. We'll talk about his best position, I'm sure, later on in the pod, Doug. But for me, I like Hagi. 2 good feet, a good football brain, and we're desperate for somebody like him to be in our team, linking the play. He's there, and I don't understand what Clement's, if he's got Bajrami and he's got Hagi both firing, and he's got an option there with both players, then bring it on. That's my opinion. As I say, if he's not going to go to Turkey between now and Friday, we need to get him into our squad somehow.
Okay, Stevie, would you agree with that? Do you think it's a bit ludicrous that a player of his ability is in the B team, or have Rangers played this right in terms of trying to get him out of the door?
I agree 100% with what Ricky just said. It's a peculiar situation where you're paying a guy £1 million a year not to play football when he's got the pedigree that he has. He's an excellent player. I've seen a lot of people say things like, you don't remember quite how he was, and he's not as good as he used to be. You've not seen him play in a long time. I saw him play at the Euros for Romania at a high level, and he did well. He looked the part, and he's got that quality that we really need. I'm fully behind Clement, but over this, I'm finding it very strange. I don't know if he's been almost forced into saying these things, but I would love to see him back in the squad. And there's no rule against having 2 number 10s. Bajrami can get injured, suspended, whatever. Competition is what Rangers should be about. And having 2 excellent players in that position, that makes perfect sense to me. If he doesn't go before the end of the week, then absolutely should be in that squad, challenging for the first team. There's absolutely no point. I mean, you're not telling me Tom Lawrence is a better player than Ianis Hagi. As Ricky said, he's got 2 good feet, he's good at set pieces. Just give the guy a chance. He wants to play. Consummate professional. Get him in there.
Yeah, Dino, coming to you there. Stevie's touched on the idea that he seems to have demonstrated on the whole most part, that he's a professional player, that he's going to approach this the right way. He trained with the B team when put in there. He played the games. He scored goals in those games. You could maybe say some of the stuff that's been out in public is a bit unfortunate, but it's not been anything too salacious. I think he's just kind of put a couple of points across. What's your thoughts on how Hagi's conducted himself during this, and then obviously touching on the point of competition? Surely it's better having more players there fighting for positions than not.
I'm going to say two things there. Take from what you said there, Doug. His way that he's carried himself has been exemplary. And I made this point on a previous pod, I think maybe last week, I don't know. Stevie was on it, I'm sure. And it was, the way he's conducted himself in the B team is a good education for the apprenticeship of the youngsters to see how you actually, in the face of adversity, you actually still be the word that Stevie, a consummate professional, which something I think is definitely a positive from the negative. And I'm going to say something on a word you just said, that fight. Hagi has that fight in him. He has that grit, that determination, that desire. And that's something that has been highlighted this season, more so after the Old Firm game, that's something that we lack. Now, we've all played football at certain levels throughout our lives, and it doesn't matter what level, but you're having a bad game or something, or the team's underperforming, but you've got that one person who's that Hagi, and it lifts you, it lifts everybody, that they want to strive to be as good as or at that level. And I'm kind of, the way that football's evolved, it doesn't fit into a system. Players now are fitting into systems. So Hagi is probably got the best football brain that's been at Ibrox for a long, long time. And in my opinion, it is one of those players who could be adaptable and, catered into any side. And I think that's something that's been overlooked, in my opinion, with Clement. Fair enough, he's lost a yard of pace since his injury, which is understandable given the type of injury it was. But he's not lost anything up there, and he's quicker than everybody on the pitch up there. And that's, again, we're starved of that creativity. that link that's been mentioned. So, in my opinion, I think Hagi it's a no-brainer for him to be involved, and if it just means that he's then going to be having to give however much more £1,000s a week, well, the way that I'm looking at it is we've actually probably not signed as many players as what I think has maybe been budgeted with how much money we've actually cut back on. So had you getting that extra £7,000 a week, I don't think is actually going to be bursting the bank for us. So I'm totally all for it.
It's a great point you've mentioned there. You want to come in on that point there, Ricky?
Yeah, I just want to just elaborate on Dino's point there, because we've got a player there who's definitely an asset. Now, if we want to get some money in this lad, he's got to put in the shop window. If he gets a run of games with a bit of consistency and he starts scoring and assisting, people start coming looking in January. Now, the money that we're going to pay for the £6,000 a week extra that Dino alluded to there, an extra £300,000 a year, we would get that back and so much more if this guy becomes a bit more consistent, because people will come knocking the door come January, and he'll be a sellable asset at the end of the season. Well, he's in his last year of his contract. So it's a win-win situation for Rangers. It ain't going to be a win-win situation if they do not bring him back into that squad. It's just ludicrous, the situation we found in with this lad. And we're on a bit the consummate professional. He never gave Rangers any bother at all. He just wants to play football. And he can play football. I just, as I say, if he's still with us come Friday night, then I look forward to getting him back in the team. And he's got to be back in that squad without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, and I think, touching on again what Dino said as well, the word fight is the perfect word to use, given the statement that came from Hagi after the Romania game last night, where they won 3-1. So again, just to read this out for those who are only listening, Hagi said in part, "It's all down to me. I know what I've been through in the last 6 weeks. I did training with the second team. I did physical training. I'm going back to Rangers. I've got 1 year left on my contract there. I gave 2 public messages. Everyone knows them. I love the club. I'm ready to fight for the fans, for what that huge club means in Europe. I'm there. I'm back. I'm fighting for the coach, for the team. They know who I am as a person, as a footballer. Tomorrow I go back to Glasgow and start all over again. I fight." I think those are very interesting words, especially given a lot of opinion over how the players were in the Old Firm just recently. People talking about lack of fight, lack of passion. And here it seems as a player who is desperate to play for not just play, but seems desperate to play for the jersey and play for the club. He says quite specifically there, "I love the club and I'm ready to fight for the fans." Do you think, do you take all that as genuine? I'll come to you, Stevie, first. Do you take all that as genuine, or do you think this could be a calculated message on the back of things that have been going on?
I think it's maybe a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. I think he wants to play, clearly. I mean, he's barely played in, apart for Romania. He's not really played much club football in a couple of years. He wants to, fulfill his potential. I've got absolutely no doubts that, his dad's behind him. I think his dad's telling him, make a go at Rangers, because, ends up at a team in Spain, doesn't really work out. There's a platform at Rangers, you can play in the Europa League, a lot of exposure, and do well. So yeah, a lot of players that are going to leave Rangers, they kind of just, like Ryan Kent, Morelos, what happened to them? Nothing really. He's got a platform there that he wants to take advantage of, and it would benefit us. Like, I don't think Rangers fans disagree about a lot of stuff, but I'm pretty sure we all agree that Ianis Hagi firing is going to be an asset to their squad. It's like, get him in there, get him used, and he will provide for us. He'll get us goals, he'll get us assists. So yeah, I'm sure he means that. But I think again he's putting it back on the club. I think we need some clarity for the manager or the board. It's like, if he's not getting a game because of the money, just come out and say it. But I hope that's not the case.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, because one of his earlier statements did seem to suggest that he was willing to come to the table over that matter. If I come to you now, Ricky, on that contract issue, that's, we all know he's sitting on 99 appearances, and the word is that hitting 100 is going to, give him this extra £7,000 per week, bringing him up to somewhere, I think, in the region of 27,000 to 28,000 pounds per week. So my assumption is obviously Rangers don't want that to happen because it might make him more difficult to sell if he's on higher wages. He's not been shifted yet, so perhaps that's been an issue, and so the club are hesitant. But does there come a point where they just have to say, right, this is too far now, and obviously that point will be if the window closes, where they will have to just maybe take Hagi up on that, get to the table, come up with some kind of deal and get him in the fold. I forget, sorry who it was, I think it was yourself that said, even if it's not going to be to become a Rangers player for the next 2 or 3, 4 years, it may be to get him in the shop window.
Yeah, we need to get him in the shop window. There's one thing for sure, we are not going to be having a £1 million a year player languishing with the B team. Rangers, that's ludicrous and it ain't going to happen. So come Saturday, he's still a Rangers player. What is he? He's 25, he's got over 30 caps for Romania. Romania did quite reasonably well during the recent Euros, so he's no mug. They're not playing him on sentiment, I wouldn't have thought, it's because of his dad. They're playing him on what he's bringing to the team for that Romanian national side. Now, he's not constantly starting all the time, but he's certainly coming on as a sub or starting and maybe getting taken off because he's not getting the minutes in his legs because he's not getting regular club football. So we can enhance and utilise that player in the middle of our park, even if it's alongside Bajrami. If he comes in, he's going to be the number one at that 10 slot. They'll both work off each other and learn off each other training. We've got an asset there, and if we just let him languish, incidentally, with just that statement he made, I was convinced that he had signed a contract to the season ending 26. I thought he had 2 years left in his contract. So if he's only got one, that's another player in the Kent situation, which is going to walk away from Rangers because he's not in the shop window. If we want to get in from him, we need to get him in that team and try and get some money from him in January. Otherwise, he's walking away as a free, and that's another £1 million down the drain. Our club needs. It's a shambles at the moment when it comes to these contracts.
Yeah, I think if I come back to you now, do you know what? Ricky raises a really good point there. If he does only have the year, then if this window closes, the only time to sell him will be in January, at which point we'd be selling him for a dramatically cut price anyway, because he'd be at the point of being able to negotiate with other clubs anyway. And if we're having trouble shifting him now, then presumably that doesn't get any better if he's sat and done nothing for the months up until then. So, what's your thoughts on that? Were you aware that his contract finished that early? And just do you have anything else to add to the comments that Hagi's made?
The comments that he made actually would bring a tear to a glass eye, that for a Rangers fan, hearing somebody talk about our club like that. And I remember that night at Ibrox against Braga, and it gives me goosebumps. One of the best feelings I've ever had in my life that night. And I'd seen how much that meant to him, so I was fairly... My feeling on his feeling for our club was substantiated that night of how much he loved our club. So him coming out and saying those things is the sound bites that every fan wants to hear, but it's 100% genuine with him. After that game, did he notice at Ibrox, baby, or something? He was just, and just different class, basically. So for me, him saying those things, I really, really, that makes me love him even more, and that makes me want him to be a success more. But we have to look at things objectively here. He's the most expensive sub in Scottish football, let's be honest, or B team player, whatever. If there's no any scope for him becoming in the first team squad, then he does need shipped on now because of the reasons that have been highlighted on this pod. And it would almost be, have we not learned our lessons from Kent and Morelos for then Hagi to be another asset, and probably one of our very only few assets that we actually have currently. So, the board are striving to be better and this, that, and the next thing. And prove to us that you're going to be better by selling them, and then having that money there for us to use in January when we're going to need to be buying again. We can't. It's not sustainable to keep running a football club the way that we run it. It's it's by luck, by fluke that we're actually able to be in the position that we're in, given how badly run we are. So, Hagi wanting to stay is all fair and well. Clement, for whatever reason, doesn't fancy him. He seems quite stubborn in his mindset and doesn't really want to hold his hands up by the looks of things, because he's said, and that's it, he wants him to move on. So it's down to us getting rid of him, and if that means selling him on for the same amount of money as I guess we would be paying him in wages, then so be it. But at least we should be getting something to generate back into the first team squad for January, and that's the way that I'm looking at it. I think if Hagi had any sort of what's the right word here? If Clement had any scope for changing his tactics, any scope for changing his personnel and within his first team squad, Hagi would have been in before now, because he's fit, as he's just said, he's fighting for the team, and I quite believe that that's exactly what he's doing day in, day out training. I believe he's probably knocking on the manager's door every day and asking, can I get in the first team? I believe that to be the case. That's how I see things. So him leaving is probably the best thing to do, given the sets of circumstances. And it's the Turkish windy and the Saudi windy. Is that right?
I think so. The Saudi one's shot. It's the Turkish one, I think.
So I mean, at the end of the day, I think there's only one team he's going to go to in Turkey, and that's Galatasaray, isn't it? I can't see his dad allowing him to sign for any other team in Turkey, is he? So Galatasaray needs a number 10, then he's the man. But other than that, going to Saudi for a year, playing football, scoring, assisting, then getting a move back into Europe, I don't know, is that the best move for him? It's a lot of mitigating factors as well. What's the best for him? He's married, things like that. You've got it's a difficult time for everything and for everyone.
Yep, absolutely. Just before we move on, I'll do a quick question in the comments here from Airwolf. Is this Clement's call or the board's call? I think that's an interesting question, because if we just take it on face value, then it's Clement's call. He's come out and said that he doesn't consider him to be a fit for the team. But the whole thing with the contract, I think, just adds a little thing that suggests that maybe there's a lot more to it in the background. It could be a combination of the two. I would suggest is maybe probably more to the truth. But those two aspects together would, and I think rightly, say that the tactic would be to sell the player. If you've got this clause that you don't want to activate, if the manager doesn't think he's 100% in the player, then you would look to sell them. So I think there's probably a bit of both in there, Airwolf, and we'll come back to that point, I imagine, as well, as we go through. But I want to move on now and talk a little bit about Hagi, the player. We've touched on it already. Both Ricky and Stevie have obviously mentioned already that they admire him as a player and the things that he can bring. So let's have a wee look at that. So the slide we've got here is statistics, majoritively from that 2021 season, where obviously Hagi played a part in the title-winning side. These are sort of the numbers on the doors, his heat map. To put a little bit of context around some of these numbers, excuse me, he got 7 goals. These are all league-only stats, I should point out as well. So he got 7 league goals, which was made him the 4th equal top scorer beside Joe Aribo. He got... I've lost it. He got 11 assists, which made him the top in the league for Rangers in assists, beating Tavernier by 2. His scoring frequency was 8th in the squad. His big chances created made him the 4th in terms of that, and he made the 5th highest number of key passes. So, a lot of those things are around about goals, assists, creative play, things that we have lacked, and things that he all was in the sort of top end of the squad about. And we should remember, this was a squad that had Tavernier just about to hit his peak. You had Kent probably at his peak, Morelos probably around about his peak as well. And Hagi is up there and in the top 5s, top 10s of these creative and attacking numbers, which I think it's what a lot of people like myself, like Ricky, Stevie, who are fans of him, remember that, yes, he wasn't, he may not have been Ronaldo or the amazing player that some people do paint him, but he was a player that did contribute. The other thing on the right-hand side there is something a lot of people have touched on, and I think one of the guys touched on as well, is his pace, and a lot of people have talked about him having lost pace due to his injury. We'll go on in a minute to look at the following season's details as well, where I think most people have taken that from. And I've got some statistics there for pace of the La Liga average pace for the season that he played there was just over 30 kilometres an hour. And then just under that, I've got some figures from the Euros for a couple of other players that were sort of talked about during the transfer window. Billy Gilmore, just as a sort of Scottish midfield example, and then our two new signings, Bajrami and Cherney. So you can see that Hagi at 29.7. It's kind of thereabouts in terms of other midfield players that we potentially could have had in the team. You've got McLean there that was linked for a while. Armstrong, there was chatter about him. Gilmore, just as an example of another creative player, a little bit quicker. And then Bajrami and Cherney, who are a step above, which you would perhaps expect from a winger. And are obviously our new 10. And I do think that is something that we'll talk about when we talk about the system that Clement wants to play. So I'll come to you first, Ricky. Is there anything you want to comment about in terms of Hagi, the player that was, in terms of that particular season? What your memories are of him from them?
Well, I always found him as a classy player. Just one thing I want to sort of clear up. He was never blessed with blistering pace, but he's no slouch. People going about this pace, he hasn't got pace. That just proves that for me, that's why he's not a winger, because he's not got the blistering pace to get by. Who has got blistering pace? We've got people like Matondo, blistering pace, he can't use it. Hagi's got a brain, and hence that's why he needs to be that central player. And if you look at those assists that he's got, so he started 23 games. He's obviously come on for another 10 during that season, and he's got 11 assists as well as his goals, 7 goals. And we're screaming out for something like that, screaming out for it. He's there, and we're not using him. So I think going back to the question that came on there, is it Clement or is it the board that are making this decision? It's difficult to tell, but it's got to be Clement, because if Clement wanted him, he would say to the board, no, we've got a player here and he's in, or I'm off, that type of thing. So I don't say it's the board, it's Clement. I think it's just Clement being stubborn over this, because he's maybe made a decision in his own mind to the club, to the players, privately, maybe 3, 4, 5 months ago, and he's been stubborn and not going to go back and what his decision he's made. And we're now in this situation where we are, if he doesn't go to Turkey, Clement's going to look rather silly. I believe he's going to look rather silly over the whole lot of this debacle that's been going on over the past few months with this lad. Those stats there during the 55 season, and also the games he played in Europe that we can all remember, never let us down in Europe. It sort of just really defies why we've got this player sitting playing in the B team, where that's proven that he's a player that should be playing with Rangers right now. I just think it's crazy. But yeah, he's not got blistering pace, but he never has blistering pace. He's got brains, he's got 2 good feet, and he can create things. And there's 11 assists here in 23, maybe possibly 33 games. I'm not too sure what minutes he was on for those other 10 when he came on as a sub. But that's not a bad return for me. That's a great return.
Stevie, I saw you nodding along for quite a lot of that there. Was there anything you want to add to that? I presume you agree with most of what Ricky said again.
I do. I mean, plus he was only 22 that season. He's still a really young guy. Tremendous return for me. He's got everything, and his awareness. He doesn't need to look. He knows where people are. That's the best football players have got it up here, and he's got it up there. The only thing I maybe slightly disagree with Ricky there on Clement, his position. Clement came out a couple of months ago and he says something something like the situation's changed to when I came in regarding signings and whatever. I'm just wondering if Hagi, because he falls into that old wage structure, it's just like, no, he's got to go. He can't be part of it because he's above that that structure. So I'm wondering if it is the board. I almost hope it is, because I'm sure. I mean, like, we're all saying it, like, how good a player Hagi is. It's like, if Clement doesn't see Hagi as a good player, and I'm not saying get rid of Clement, I'm his biggest supporter, but there's just something not right with that. You know, it's like, if he's made a mistake, then admit you made a mistake and bring him back in, because nobody will hold it against you. It's improving the team, and that's a good thing for Rangers. But aye, the rest of what Ricky said, I agree with 100%.
On that point, Dino, if it has been a board decision due to the contract situation, would it not have been better for Clement just to have been maybe a bit more wishy-washy about it? Because he was quite definite in his comments, and I mean, I've no reason to disbelieve him. If he says he doesn't see Hagi as the 10, then that's fine. But at the same time, surely he could have come out and either just said the truth, said, look, we don't like the structure that we've got there. We don't think we can renegotiate it. So that's what the situation is. Do you think that Ricky's already touched on it? Do you think that Clement's going to have to go back on what he said come Friday if he's still there? And your own memories from that period from Hagi as well.
Well, the memory from that record-breaking season for every Rangers fan was sheer euphoria, and Hagi was a massive part of that. Great player, honestly. But going on the sort of the aspect of it being the board or Clement, I've said this before. I think there's an element. I believe that there's an element of both, because I think as a manager, you do have some sort of superiority in terms of, like, I want this player in our team. If this player's going to be in our team, he's going to help us be doing this at the end of the season, right? However, flip side of that is the board turning and saying that this is the structure we've got now. We need to cut back. We need this X, Y, and Z, right? So the way that I'm looking at it is that we're saying that Clement to hold his hands up, say that he's made a mistake and whatnot. But one thing that we don't get at Rangers is transparency. And being transparent with the fans, I think, would give Clement credit in the bank. Now, he can come out in a way, as media trained that he is, and elaborate on the situation in terms of it being a board decision, but in a way that he's not going to be chucking the board under the bus, or it's him that doesn't fancy Hagi, but he could do it in a way where he's not going to be chucking anybody under the bus, but in a professional, respectful manner, which would then, as I said, give the fans that transparency and give him credit at the bank. And it's going on the point of what Stevie said. If it is Clement, and he's not asking for Clement to be sacked, but it's going to be, I guess, another nail in the coffin, so to speak, for some Rangers fans. So, and I think he needs to be doing these sort of things to be winning some fans over at the moment, because of how things actually are. And I don't think that there would be anything detrimental, that's the right word, to anybody for him to come out and, as I said, elaborate on the situation, because it's a crazy situation for us to be in. When we signed him on the premise that he was going to be at Ibrox and use us as a stepping stone, let's be honest, and perform, for him to then go on to achieve greater things in football. I think there was loads of teams scouting him throughout the years. Barcelona, I think I recall maybe seeing scouting him at one point. I can't remember if it was at Rangers or before Rangers or something like that. But the point I'm making is he was very sought after. So he was seeing Rangers as to come to us to play for a big club. The pressure and the demand for them to propel him to the next level of his career, and it's a sad state of affairs given where he's actually and we're currently at.
Can I just come on really quickly, Mika?
Yep.
Just there's a parallel with this. When I heard this, Don Hutchinson, I think he's a great pundit. I heard him on Talk Sport one day. He was talking about his time at Everton when Walter Smith was the boss. And there was a contract thing then when basically that was it. He was training the reserves for about 2 months. But he was like, Walter, never stop talking to me. You know, it was never an issue. It was just, all right, this is a situation. Contract has to be resolved. And after a couple of months, it did get resolved, and he came straight back in. And it was just like the relationship was still there. The best managers manage these situations like really well. And I don't know if Clement's doing that just now.
Absolutely, and that ties in with. I was going to make a point as well. This comment here from I'll call him Mr. Stubborn. All we want is the truth, and I think I've said this to people when I've been in management positions. I've said this to teams that people won't always agree with decisions I make regarding whatever it might be, but. I'll always try and explain those decisions to them so that they understand why I'm making those decisions, because people don't need to like every decision. But if you explain the why, you're honest, you're upfront, then they can at least respect the decision. And, for me, was always a really important part of management and interacting with people in general. If you show people respect, you can disagree, but still push forward and be positive. And work positively. And I think that's something that in situations like this is going to be really key. Okay, so how we look now at his period the following season? And I think this is where a lot of issues for a lot of people come from, this period of time. So there's a couple of things. I've put these the details of this season slightly differently to kind of put a few points to you guys on the panel and see what your thoughts are. So these are our fixtures in chronological order, including Cup and European games. And I've got then the position that Hagi played in those matches, his goals, his assists, and the number of minutes that he played. The small B's mean that he was on the bench. The red X was an injury. He got a slight, I think it was either a knee or an ankle lock at the beginning of the season, but only kept him at that one game. And then the 3 weeks where the wee mask, he had the disease which shall not be named, as we were still in amongst that kind of thing at that point. For me, a lot of the comments that people make about Hagi's pace in particular seem to come from this period of time. And I feel that that's for more to do with, like Ricky said, Hagi was never a fast player, I don't think. So I don't think it's so much that he declined in pace, but the system changed and it no longer suited his attributes. When he played under Gerrard, we obviously played with more narrow, sort of the 210s kind of thing. And so although Hagi was on the right, he wasn't like wide right, like a kind of a Giggs would be, hugging the touchline kind of thing, and expected to be a pacey winger. Whereas when we brought Van Bronckhorst in, he did like his wingers to be more wide and be more like classic wingers. And so I think that's where, in my mind, people are getting this idea that he's lost a huge amount of pace, because they're remembering that and thinking about, oh, well, he wasn't a quick player there and doesn't fit that, which is true. But that, to me, was more of a system issue. Now, that I think will come into what we'll talk about after this in terms of Clement's system as well. But that's one thing I wanted to pose to you. The other thing I wanted to pose as well, the last column I've put here, his position. So there's 27 games that he played. 16 of them he played right wing, 5 he played centrally, and 4 he played on the left. But that wee bottom column is how many times he played consecutively in the same position. So just under half of the games he played, he was never consecutively in the same position. And as you can kind of see, the majority of all of those consecutive positions come in that sort of second half spot where he does eventually kind of settle on the right. But in that first period, he's like, just after he comes back from his illness, he's going right, left, middle, right again, then back to the left again. He's jumping all the way about. And I don't think that's conducive to a player playing their best if they're constantly moving. And I got the feeling during that kind of time that he was kind of getting used, because he's a good player, he's an intelligent player, he was getting used to plug the gaps because of the other injuries that were going on. So those are my kind of suggestions for that period of time. So I want to put them to you. I'll start with you, Ricky. What were your thoughts of that period of time, just prior to obviously his big injury? Do you think any of those points have credence, or am I just trying to make excuses because I want to see him play?
No, I think those stats sum up perfectly, which I've said all along. He's not a winger. Now, when he's not got the pace to go by the fullbacks, what normally happens for those that have played the game, you'll always come inside, you'll always cut back, so you become predictable. So when he's playing more central, he can go left, he can go right, he's quick, he can, little 5-yard pass moving because he's a workaholic. That's another thing, a good asset by him. He never stops working. But if you put him out wide in one of the wings, he doesn't get the pace to get by. He's always going to come inside. You love playing against people like that, don't you? Because he's so predictable. And that probably turns out in his stats there. We never played him at his true position during that season there, which was the central midfield, the number 10 role, or even a little bit deeper as a number 6, because he can go left and right. He doesn't need to have that blistering pace. It's just those like 1-2 sort of 5-yard, 10-yard passes, interlinking the play and getting the ball to the wingers, or a nice sort of a through ball to the front runners to get on top of and behind the defence. That's what he's good at, interlinking the play, not as a winger, for me anyway.
Okay, what would you say, Stevie, following on from that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I'd play him in the front of a diamond. You could have Barnes, Sterling, Diamande and Hagi in front of them. I mean, that to me, if you add Hagi into those three, it makes them better players. Gives them better options. Like Ricky's mentioned there before a couple of times, he's got great vision, can really pick a pass. He sees the space. And if you've got guys like Barron, Diamande, Sterling round about you, there's plenty of legs there. Like I made this point the last time we spoke about Hagi, there's just, he's got the talent. I get other guys who can maybe a bit more mobile, like you had with Joe Aribo, Glenn Kamara. We're obviously not at that level of quality of players. But to me, Hagi's, for that time, for like 3 years ago, we really had a cracking midfield. His quality's still there. He's still well up there. So yeah, let's use him. And yeah, I would definitely love to see him playing as a 10, 100%.
Yep. Okay, and do you know, one of the other sort of criticisms I see about Hagi is that he drifted in and out of games and he wasn't effective enough. Did you feel that that was a problem with him? And is that something that you remember at all?
No, most certainly not. It's not one of those things that I've ever paid too much attention on, because in a split second he can slice through a defence. And cast your memories back to Braga away. Kent scored 1-0. It was Hagi. It was Hagi's pass. Hagi had hardly been in the game, if memory serves me right, and I'm sure it was his pass that Kent went on to score, and we won 1-0 away. I'm sure it was the first time we played Braga, actually. Yeah. So I don't have any issues with that. Good players will drop out of games all the time. It's been happening ever since I was born, probably before I was born, and will continue to happen once I'm gone. So it's just footballers, and if they've got it up there, they don't need to be in a game. They can get, as I said, they get the ball. They can, create something out of nothing. They can help creating something, just by a pass, just by having a shot, just anything that impacts the outcome of the game. And Hagi's one of those players, and that's one of the reasons why Gerrard signed him as well. And I remember reading when we signed him, and different comments from different people and Hagi's ability, because people is always his dad, he's his dad's son, and how he's blah 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 blah. His dad was a phenomenal football player, he was one of the best in the world in the 90s. Easily, and his dad had a good bit of pace about him, if you remember, Stevie and Ricky and Doug. He was a fast. He was quite quick, Georgie, wasn't he? So, and people always thought, I remember people saying he's going to be like his dad. He's not going to be like his dad, even in things like that. So, that pressure for him to then be a player, I think, is quite remarkable. For him to then believe in his own ability and having the footballing IQ as high as you could probably get, is what I've seen. And yeah, I've never had any sort of negative thoughts about him not being in games. He's the type of player, he can not be in a game for 50 minutes, but pops up and scores a goal or has an assist and makes a difference. He's just one of those players.
I totally agreed. He's got that X factor. He's just the pedigree's there. It can't not be there, like you say. His second name's Hagi, and that does carry weight. You know what I mean? It's like you see that name in the team sheet, and it's a huge boost. So let's hope he comes back into there.
Okay, so the kind of last point then on the agenda is to kind of look at if we're going to fast forward to Monday morning, the transfer windows across the world are closed. Hagi is a Rangers player for the next 4 months minimum. If we're looking at, does he fit in the team? Where can he go? How could Clermont use him? Clermont said he doesn't see him as a 10. I think that is because he isn't blessed with pace and he wants a fast front line. We had obviously the pace up for Bajrani and Cherney, who are a good step above Hagi in terms of pace. So I do think, to my mind, that's why Clermont doesn't view him as a 10 in his particular system, because he wants fast players in those attacking positions. But I personally think, well, fine, drop him deeper then. You could still use him. Or, as I know a number of people have already said in the comments, he's surely still a better option than Lawrence as the backup 10 if Bajrami was to get injured or you just wanted to rest him. So I've got our tactics board here. I've switched it around from what you saw earlier when I showed it to you in response to Stevie's ideas of playing him kind of at the point of I've not quite got a diamond, but with Barron and Diamandi there. Bajrani, I've moved out to the left, which he just played with his national team, so he's capable of doing that. I'll come to you first, Stevie, as you did kind of talk about it a wee second ago. Is that the kind of thing you would maybe look to do with him, and in terms of how you would move the other players around, or is there anything else? Would you want to go 4-4-2 with a diamond?
To me, that looks good, and it's not just like that doesn't have to be like stuck on that. They can interchange, they can switch, they can change it up. Like one of the best ever teams I've seen at Ibrox in Europe was Valencia. I think it was 1999. They were a phenomenal team, and their movement with players in that exact position, they kept changing, and we didn't have a clue. We could not catch their shadows. So having guys like that in those positions, they can easily switch it up. But yeah, I'd be delighted. Like if that was the team that started like at the weekend, that would be cracking for me. I'd have Sterling in there somewhere. But to me, it's like, you've got your style of play, you've got your systems, but you've not only got one style or one system. You need to vary it. You need to change it because you're going to come up against different oppositions and different challenges. So, it's good to be flexible. But yeah, I don't know how you feel, but to me, that looks like something that you would definitely see goals and a bit more exciting football.
I've made what I think is the fan popular choice and put Sterling in it right back there. Ricky, what about yourself? How would you fit Hagi into the team, kind of fitting his best into what Clermont seems to like to play?
Well, having options is certainly what Rangers are screaming for, and there's lots of options here, all being everybody's fit. I would have Cortez in that team. I fit Cortez, mind you, because I think he has got the pace, he's got the craft, he's got the skill, and he can make things happen down the wing. Bajrani, we don't know yet how he's going to fit in, but the way he plays with Albania, he plays as that number 10, blistering sort of a pace, bullies people. So does he get in front of Hagi? Then he probably does. But we've already said there's nothing wrong with having Hagi as that backup number 10. Because I don't see him in one of the wings. It's either Bajrami or Hagi in there. But it's interesting in the slide before, Doug. Hagi during that season where after the 55. He won 51% of his duels. So when it comes to combativeness, he's actually quite a competitive player. So if he's winning 50% of his 50-50s, then maybe he could play that number 6 role you've got in there potentially. I don't know, but I don't think he's going to not play Bajrami with the money spent for him. The way the boy is playing internationally for his own team, he's playing tonight again. Certainly, the quality's there, but he was so poor against Celtic, and you think to yourself, we're building up. All of a sudden, everyone was dead flat again. You think, oh, God, here we go again. But for me, Cortez is a quality player. I've mentioned Agami before. Agami could be a diamond. Morocco have got a good bunch of kids. They came third in the recent World Cup. They came third in the under-23 Olympics just gone there. And Agami would have been in that squad if it wasn't for his injury. So he's definitely a player, but we just need to get him into that team as we do Cortez and everybody else and getting them fit. Hagi is another asset. So all of a sudden your bench looks good and competitive, and you need that for the first 11 to be on their toes, because they know there's going to be guys sitting in that bench. At the moment, we just don't have that, guys, and that's a poor reflection on our recruitment over the past few years that we don't have a strong bench, and we need to get that strong bench back for that team to be competitive and everybody being on their toes on the first 11 when they start at 90 minutes. If that means Hagi's on the bench, fine. If he starts as a number 10, fine. We just got to get him involved with that squad.
Absolutely. I mean, I think when you're looking at, like you say, the combinations you talked about there, and having players on the bench, surely this is a good problem to have. You've got a bunch of players here in the centre that can do a job, and then you've got like Dowell there, and you've got Lawrence who could be on the bench. Rice as it was one of the backups to that. Raskin, who I've totally forgotten about when he comes back from injury. You've got Raskin coming in here. Mm-hmm. You're given more options, and to me, there's different combinations that could be going on there as well. I'll come to you, Dino, to finish us off there. Where would you look to play Hagi if it was going to be you? Would you seen a couple of people saying they'd maybe change to 4-4-2? Would you change the system completely, or would you try and fit him in the way that we've got the existing system going?
I'd spot Stevie said, just to echo that. To be successful, you've got to have a plan B, you've got to have a plan C. Clement doesn't seem too fussed on deviating from plan A. So that kind of leaves your options limited in terms of the system and the formation. Now, Hagi has played in that number 8 position for us. I remember watching a few games, and so if you've got legs in beside him, such as I'm going to use Sterling in there, that's sort of winning the ball winning central midfielder. Hagi is the creative sort of link between midfield and attack. Then Bajrani in front of him with Cortez, and do you know what I mean? That's quite an exciting sort of team to actually have. And then you've got players like Diomande, Barron on the bench, Raskin on the bench. You then all of a sudden have players who are bursting to get on it, to go to that pitch and be making themselves, first names on the team sheet. So it doesn't necessarily have to be played in that 10 position. You could accommodate both Hagi and Bajrani in the same team, but have them both centrally. And if you've got somebody like Sterling who stay centrally, because I think against Celtic he was all over the place, wasn't he? So if you actually have him staying centrally, then you could actually, combine Hagi's creativeness with his ability to win the ball, his ability to, do everything defensively you could want from a central midfielder, and Hagi the other side of things. That's a good option for me. But we're going to need to see something different from Clement, I think, because it's not working for him. And if Hagi's here, he's going to have to do something. But as Ricky said, you're not paying that money for Bajrani to be a rotational player. Put it that way, you're spending that money because he's going to be one of the first names on the team sheet every week, and he's going to be starting every game. He's going to be fit, for my opinion. So, so Hagi's, play the number 10. Come on for him, 10, 15 minutes or whatever it is. Certain games, give him a rest. Certain games, cup games, but Hagi and him can be utilised in the same team as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with that. I don't have a problem with Bajrani being the number 1 for the 10th position. I think that's fine. As I say, I do think he fits Clement's system better than Hagi because of the speed part, which I do think is something he wants. I find this particular 4 as a combo, Cortez, Igamani, Bajrani and Cherney, to be really exciting. The potential for them to all be rotating all over the place, because Cortez and Cherney can move about. Bajrani can drift into wings. Mane is apparently able to play on both sides. So I think that's really exciting. But I also think it's exciting that you could have Hagi sat at the back feeding all of these guys really great balls. I mean, was it I think, did you touch on it earlier? Do you know, I think one of the away games we had, I think, was it the where Braga one, where he feeds a beautiful ball's coming right over his head, and then he feeds this beautiful cross ball to Kent, who goes on to score. And that's the kind of thing I think we're missing, that kind of ingenuity, that kind of magic. So, there's definitely, at the worst, he improves the squad, he improves the bench. And I think that to just have him sit and do nothing is a waste. And I think we've all been pretty unanimous on that point.
No, just going to say one last thing on that. Sorry, Doug. So you were, we're comparing obviously Lawrence being in the squad. So if Hagi's playing against Celtic last week and he loses the ball like Lawrence did, you're not going to see Hagi coming into the screen a minute later. Hagi's had, that's the point I want to make. Like Lawrence fits Clemont's style of play, but Hagi doesn't. Baffling, if you think about it, absolutely baffling. Like, what does Lawrence bring to the team that Hagi can't? Like, in terms of pace, in terms of determination, in terms of 50-50s, in terms like everything that Lawrence isn't, in terms of creativity. We've all just highlighted all these things that Hagi is, but what about the things that Lawrence apparently brings that Hagi doesn't? That's a question that needs asked, as far as I'm concerned. I just wanted to put that in.
That's an excellent one as well, and we'll hopefully we can get to that at another pod and explore that one more fully. But we are getting on, so I just want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who's been watching with us this evening for another episode of the Rangers Journal. All your comments and points have been coming through. As I say, the show would be nothing without you guys watching and contributing, so thank you very, very much. As host, I just want to thank the panel, Ricky, Stevie and Dino, for joining me this evening and putting their points across. I'll just come to you, Ricky, for your final word and to say goodbye.
Yeah, thanks, lads. I enjoyed that tonight, and I'd just like to say all the best to the young lad Hagi. I hope he's at Rangers on Saturday, and I hope he has a cracking season. That's all, best of luck to the lad.
And yourself, Stevie?
Thanks again for having me, mate. It's been great fun, and thanks for everyone for taking part. And to echo what Ricky said, I hope Hagi's in the Rangers team in the next couple of weeks.
And finally, as I always say, the handsome man of the pod, Dino, thank you very much for joining us and for travelling straight from work to your hotel room to be here tonight.
Nah, I wouldn't miss it for the world, mate. So thanks for having me. Pleasure and privilege as always. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Please like, subscribe and share. We're not far away from 2,000 subs now, so every little helps, guys. Thank you.
Absolutely, totally echo that. Please do like and subscribe if you want to see more. We've got plenty more stuff coming for the rest of the week to hopefully for you to enjoy. So do tune in, as we say every night here on Rangers Journal. Do not forget that every night is Rangers Journal night. Goodbye.